Hi everyone, and welcome to Noona's Noonchi, where I do a deep dive into some of our favorite K-dramas from a mental health perspective. I want to talk about resilient female character portrayals that are good for our mental health, and not necessarily female leads. To define resilience for you, resilience is the psychological quality that helps you bounce back in the face of adversity and trauma. It's a way of giving you emotional healing so you can keep going towards your life goals or career goals or whatever goals you have in life. Emotionally healing. Just so you know, resilience doesn't mean that special people have it. People think it's like this X factor. Oh, he or she has resiliency. Oh, because they've been through this. No, we are all born with resiliency. We need to hone it, develop it through skills. So I call it ordinary, not extraordinary, without underplaying it, right? Resilience. Now, cultural resilience is going further, deeper, looking into how our cultural values, how our cultural heritage, cultural background affects the way we bounce back in the face of adversity and trauma. And yes, that's a big factor. Our cultural heritage, cultural background, right? How we view things, our life schema. And the other part about cultural resilience, important to understand, protective factor is asking for help, builds courage and communication skills. Risk factors, suppressing emotions and repressing thoughts. So let's talk about the wonderful character portrayals that really show resilience, aka cultural resilience. What I like to point out is these female characters shortly. I'll outline four, though there are many, but four that come to mind that really will help you with your mental health, their portrayals. Let's start with 2018's Mr. Sunshine, the character played by Kim Min-jung, right? I think her name was Kudo Hina. She had a Japanese name, but she also had a Korean name, but I can't remember that. But she played the Glory Hotel owner, and she was a widow, left with the Glory Hotel, which she manages and runs and owns, and shows herself to be a very resilient, strong female leader. Now, I want to point out that she comes from a background that's turbulent, right? Her father happens to be, I would say, the villain. Is that the best word for it? The villain of the show. And Kudo Hina, Kim Min-jung's character, has a really very important conversation in episode 12 with Mr. Sunshine that I'm going to point out that I want to share as a mental health example. Very calmly and firmly. You know, I really admire women that though they may feel emotionally turbulent inside, emotionally filled with so much distress or even anger, frustration, whatever the emotions they're feeling, she puts on a calm demeanor, says it very strongly, firmly, kind of making her case on what side she's on when she talks to Mr. Sunshine, Lee Byung-hun's character. Basically, he's like, can I trust you? And she's like, well, let me see and let me explain. And she kind of doesn't say, yes, you can. She says, in her own strong, resilient voice, I would have given you something else, but I gave you the key, basically allowing him to break into something. So basically, she proved her alliance. And then we find out, obviously, hopefully this isn't a spoiler for you guys, but watch this K-drama, is that she is the daughter of what I would call the villain of the show. But she detaches herself from that, finds her own identity, and makes the Glory Hotel what it is, right? And shows herself to be, you know, someone not to be trifled with as a female. And in that day and age, the Chosun era, but way back when, really good to see. And I love that portrayal. And of course, Aishin, the main character, yes, love her portrayal. But I wanted to point out where these mental health examples that you really miss, that, you know, I see from a clinical standpoint in episode 12, where she kind of states who she is, who she has become, and the detachment from the family history where she's searching for her mother, but really doesn't want to have anything to do with her father, who basically sold her, you know, and she knows that. So coming from a trauma-informed lens, which is my perspective on trauma, assuming that all of us have some experience with trauma, and also how to understand the healing process and work with the trauma in our lives and not detach ourselves from it. She does a good job of moving forward from her trauma being sold, you know, by her own father, betrayed by her own father, but not showing so much of that vengeance and anger, right? What we see is strength, resiliency, cultural resilience, where, you know, if we're talking culturally from the lens of Asian Americans or Asians, that she's using her own values and beliefs to be who she is today. That is Kim Min-jung's character, Kudo Hina, Mr. Sunshine. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Startup. Okay, Startup 2020 K-drama. No, I'm not going to talk about Han Ji-pyong. I am going to talk about Kang Hana's character, Won In-jae. Man, that scene in episode 3 when she stands up to her stepdad and stepbrother when they were trying to dismiss her. By the way, what she's facing is the glass ceiling, bamboo ceiling, the barrier that Asian Americans face in the workplace and leadership, moving up to C-suite level, and then the glass ceiling, what women face, or African Americans face, or marginalized populations face. Same thing, just bamboo is just more the Asian term for it. And she was being dismissed, really, kind of dismissed for the promotion or being seen as a CEO level. And that really rings true because I encounter it. And I see females encounter it. I see marginalized populations encounter it. It really exists still to this day. And I love that Startup showed that. Strong CEOs. There's many other shows that show that, like Search WWW. But what I love about Won In-jae is this conversation that she literally disrupts a board meeting, a big meeting they're having where they're introducing the stepbrother, where the stepdad's grooming him to be the next CEO. And she storms in. Now, I will say this can happen in real life if you do it well. Now, it was a little more dramatic, obviously, in Startup, but she's like, no, I'm not going to the US. That's where he was trying to send her, the stepfather. I'm going to stay here and basically show you what an idiot my stepbrother is. Now, I wouldn't really want to word it that way, but that example, that model, take it for face value. Really good for your mental health because women face that a lot. Asians face it a lot. African Americans face it. Just the I guess that barrier, the ceiling, capped because of stereotypes, or that you don't meet a certain quality because you're not this, right? And yes, it exists in marginalized populations. So I love that she, as an Asian female, Korean female, says it like it is, and then guess what she does? Becomes her own CEO, decides to start fresh. And you know what? What she did was difficult. The easier thing would have been go to the US and follow her stepfather and just do that and live a cushy life. She did the harder route. And that happened to me personally as well. Well, I was fighting for something, my value as a speaker, as a female Asian American, Korean American speaker in corporate America. I had to fight for my value because people were like, why are you fighting for this? And at one point I was like, yeah, this is definitely hurting my mental health. What should I do? But guess what I decided to do was fight. Just like Won In-jae, fight for your value, which is very important to your mental health. So I made the choice for my mental health. It was difficult. The easy way would have been to stop the fight. But I went for the harder route because in the end result that I wanted was to show my value for the sake of my own well-being. And that is what Won In-jae does. And she does a great job. Startup episode 3. What next? Hospital Playlist Season 2. Who am I going to point out? This is a beautiful female character portrayal of resilience from trauma, domestic abuse that she witnessed growing up. Yeah, I'm talking about Kyol. Oh my gosh. She has such a great example, sharing just so honestly and candidly with strength, resiliency in episode 10 to her boyfriend. What I really like is I'm gonna point this out, okay? Generally speaking, data shows that if you grow up in a household witnessing domestic violence or abuse, interpartner violence, being exposed to abuse in a household, that generally speaking, you're set up for relationships to be turning out that way, either being abused yourself or abusing somebody else. That's what the data shows. What I love is Kyol doesn't turn out that way. Now, and I also love how she handles it. She keeps it to herself, which is also the Korean way, but taking care of it herself, kind of alluding that something's going on, and he knows it. Her boyfriend knows it, right? Oh, I love that guy. Yeah, Yoon Suk. What's his character? You would think I would remember his character's name. But anyways, I love the way that he patiently waits instead of pushing, going, tell me. Yeah, she ruined a proposal that he had in mind. Oop, that might be a spoiler. But anyways, he's patient with her. Goes to show you that she is in a healthy relationship. That's what I want to point out. For mental health purposes, example of Kyol being in a very good relationship. Not toxic, not showing that she's in an abusive relationship that she could have been. That's what the data shows that she'd be going towards. No, she decided, okay, with her resiliency and strength, I'm gonna go to med school, become a doctor, get out of this life, right? She was still there to help her mother, but very difficult to be witnessing a father abusive that she flat out tells. That's how she starts the conversation, which I think is very strong. Admitting, not beating around the bush, going, you know what? My dad's abusive, and then shares the story and the history and how she was terrified. That also shows strength. really being expressive. Really, that's what I love. And that is so good for your mental health. And then sharing with her very, I would say, healthy boyfriend, her professor, the person she looks up to, and him having a really great response and really, I want to say in some sense, supporting her, but not to the point of like, let me take care of you. Obviously affirming the strength she has and also saying that it's not her fault, which is the guilt that you have when you are trying to help a mother or somebody, a family member in an abusive relationship. So, Kyoul, episode 10, Hospital Playlist, season 2, so well done. Another example from a trauma-informed lens that she was able to manage her trauma well, heal through her trauma constantly. Remember, you're still healing through trauma. It's not like you can completely forget it, but show good behavior, and in a positive relationship. And that's the takeaway, my folks. Okay, last but certainly not least, of course, the K-drama that was, wrapped in my mind because it really boosted my mental health. Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. Who am I going to talk about in Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha? Take a wild guess. Choi. Yeah. Choi. Now, this is the scene that I love at episode 14, Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. Choi standing up to her mother, but not standing up to her mother meanly, right? Really showing that emotion of literally an unrequited love, a love that she had for Hwajong, right? For many years. She even left the town, came back, still had the same feeling. She was in love with another woman, and her mother saying things like, which is, I would say, the typical Korean thing to say, it's my fault. Oh my gosh, it's all my fault that I raised you this way. And she's saying, so well done. No, it's not your fault. And it's not my fault either. Oh my goodness. Folks, that's the takeaway. In that episode 14, Choi standing up for her gender identity and not being shamed of it. We are so, in a culture that's all about shame and guilt and filial piety. She basically progressively changed all that, pivoted her own life. But what I really like that we saw later on is her speaking to Hwajong and admitting it. That's another piece. Understanding, hey, this is where I am in my journey. I'm at peace with who I am and who I fell in love with, and I'm going to share it with the woman I fell in love with. And then the fact that she goes to her, the guy, the ex-husband, to reconcile with Hwajong, so beautifully done too. Showing again a resilient, cultural resiliency that I wanted to point out in Choi's character in episode 14. Those are 4 female character portrayals that I want to say I need you to look at for the sake of your mental health. Very different workplace, right? Family, gender, and then domestic abuse. Mr. Sunshine, different era, but also showing another history of pivoting from your family to be who you want to be, even though you come from that family. You don't have to let trauma define you, right? And I do want to talk about trauma because I come from that lens of we all have some sort of trauma, but don't let it define you. You can move forward and look at those poignant portrayals of resiliency, cultural resiliency, folks. Well, folks, that's it. Thanks for watching Noona's Noonchi. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to get notified of new episodes to come.